Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ezpeleta, and I'm here to present you this paper or study titled New Paradigms of Analysis Based on Content for the Detection of Spam in Social Media. I'll begin with a short intro on myself. I come from the University of Mondragon. I hold a PhD in computing, and I currently work as a teacher and researcher at the University of Mondragon. Why have I been invited to present this study to you? Well, this study is a study that I presented last year, in September last year. This was actually my PhD dissertation. And this year in June, I submitted an abstract or summary of my PhD dissertation in the National Cybersecurity Conference held in Madrid. And my paper, my study was shortlisted, received an award, and that's why INCIBE, the Spanish National Cybersecurity Institute, invited me to present my study here at CyberCamp. I mentioned JNIC 2018, and I invite you to participate in the next edition of this conference. And the University of Mondragon will be in charge of organizing the next edition of this conference, and soon the agenda will be uploaded on the website. So check it out. I invite you to participate. I'm sure it will be extremely interesting. And now let me go for the table of contents. Here you can see the table of contents of my presentation. It's very similar to the table of contents of my PhD dissertation. I'll begin with a brief introduction, the reasons behind my study, the objectives of my study. Then I'll delve into the details, into the content per se. I'll explain what personalized spam is. I'll explain feeling analysis when filtering spam. Afterwards, I'll talk about personality recognition in the text in order to detect spam. And I'll finish up by referring to both of these techniques and talking about how we can combine these two techniques to obtain better results. And I finish off my presentation with a summary. Since we began talking about spam, how can we define spam? If you access the website of the Spanish Language Academy, you find the definition of spam as junk mail, massive distribution emails with malicious content that is received without having requested this. This definition is a bit outdated in the sense that it doesn't cover everything. We can receive massive malicious content through other channels aside from email, for example, the social media, or perhaps the instant messaging services like WhatsApp or private messages sent in social media. So it's not just about emails. When we talk about spam, we need to consider that spam has many negative consequences. I classify them in four major groups. First, the direct consequences. And basically, we're talking about advertising info that we receive in order to sell products we're probably not interested in. And there's also the possibility that when we receive that email, we download some malware or virus that can damage our computers and put them at risk. And then we have the network consumption resource issue. If we consider the traffic of emails that we have these days and the amount of spam that is transmitted through the networks, of course, this can saturate them. And then we have human resources, i.e., all the time we can lose ourselves by erasing those emails we're not interested in. We spend quite a bit of time eliminating these messages that are undesired. And then there's also a loss of legitimate emails or messages. What we see is that email services have their own filters and message classifiers, but sometimes what we have are cases of legitimate email incorrectly classified and transferred to the spam mailbox. So we end up losing those legitimate emails. This is something that needs to be prevented. Legitimate emails cannot be sent to spam folders. That's something we need to combat. And when we talk about spam with people, well, some people tend to say, well, it's not really such a problem. It's not a major problem. I don't receive that much spam. Others say, yes, I'm completely bombarded with spam. If we take a look at the statistics, every 3 months, Kaspersky publishes statistics. In the year 2017, the evolution from April to September is as follows: 57% of the messages or emails can be classified as spam, according to Kaspersky's quarterly reports. And this is a trend that we've observed in all the sectors and areas that I've examined in my PhD dissertation. These figures remain more or less stable. It's true that during some months the percentage falls, but during the next 2 months we see an increase. So in general, we're always around 60%, a little bit below 60%. I mentioned earlier the instant messaging services as another source of spam, or the social media that give us the opportunity of sending messages. We see that there's a market niche in which attackers can feel very comfortable and confident and very easily can access and attack many people. Many of these instant messaging services are transmitting spam. In 2015, there were more than 6 million mobiles that could receive or send text messages. WhatsApp. What can we say to WhatsApp? We're all hooked to WhatsApp, to this instant messaging technique. In February 2016, WhatsApp exceeded the level of 1 trillion users, for example. And in countries like China and India, text messages in the year 2011 accounted for spam, and text messages accounted for between 20 and 30% of overall traffic in these countries. The case of text messages is interesting because if we analyze it from our perspective, from the Spanish perspective, text messages are paid services. It's true that some telecoms offer this for free, but up until recently you had to pay to send text messages. But in China and India, for example, text messaging is free of charge. So in Asian countries, WhatsApp isn't that present because text messaging is free of charge. And this kind of spam can reach a huge audience. Let's move on. Let me give you further figures or statistics so that you understand the reason behind my PhD dissertation. Number of users of social media. These are figures from the year 2017, most of them. Some from February to June. There's for WeChat we have to December 2016. These are the millions of users that each of these social media have. What we see here from the point of view of attackers is basically a great opportunity to reach a huge amount of money and to be able to extract a humongous amount of data from these sites. User data, for example. Considering all these elements, all this data, and we conducted a comprehensive analysis of literature and state of the art, and we considered different hypotheses. First, personalized spam can be a major problem that maximizes the response ratio of spam. what we see is that there's a possibility of using the real information of the real people that interact in social media, and with that we can create spam that is personalized according to these people's tastes and preferences, favorite Facebook sites, and based on that we can create personalized spam, i.e. spam that is directly targeted to the recipient with a subject matter of a theme that this person is close to or is interested in. So that's an ill-intended purpose, but our goal is not to send spam and offer attackers new tools in order to be able to continue doing their misdeeds. No, we wanted to go a step further, and we thought, okay, once we have this, how can we detect this kind of email, this kind of spam? And that's when we considered two additional hypotheses. Number one, it's possible to identify the commercial intentionality behind messages using content analysis techniques. For example, we saw that there was a possibility of using content analysis that could help us analyze the text and the information in the text of our messages and identify the commercial intentionality behind these messages. As an example, and we'll expand on this further later on, if someone tries to sell us something, at the beginning maybe we thought, someone is trying to sell me something, and it's likely that he does so from a positive perspective, because if I'm told that his product is of poor quality or has some problems, well, it's highly likely that I won't buy that product. However, if the message is always positive and there's praise for that product, the message will come across more easily. So we said, okay, it's more likely that messages have a positive tone, and this can be a sign that can help us detect spam. And then we will see the data we extract. And the last hypothesis is that the intentionality of the message can be used to classify spam messages in the social media. Just like we do with normal email, we can apply this to social media. Advertisements that we, or comments that we publish in our walls and in our social media. So with these hypotheses in mind, we wanted to demonstrate that it is indeed possible to create new types of spam using social media information, and show that it's possible to design and develop new methods to improve the filtering, spam filtering results both inside and outside social media. And with these objectives in mind, we started working to try to see what had been done up until now in these fields. And we saw that regarding spam detection, the learning-based filters were the ones that obtained the best results. So this was an important starting point for us to design our future experiments. On the other hand, if we have to analyze the content of the text, well, of course, nothing better than using natural language processing techniques. What kind of techniques are we talking about? Computational techniques that can help us analyze text in order to reach almost human processing in apps or tasks. And some studies have demonstrated the possibility of developing anti-spam techniques using, for example, text mining techniques, i.e. natural languages processing techniques. More information that we saw, for example, social media, security of social media. We've seen that in the past years, there are more and more researchers that are conducting research in this field and working on different products and social media applications and other systems to face or combat these potential vulnerabilities that sometimes the social media can show. And then we saw that most of the research is done regarding the social media, but we realized or understood that the information compiled from a social medium can also be used beyond or outside that social media for non-legitimate or illegitimate purposes and are therefore a threat. With all this information in mind, we drafted our work program, our work plan. At first, we decided to try to create personalized spam by using public info published on social media, and to be able to bypass the current anti-spam systems and try to then detect the intentionality and the reason behind the messages. We analyze content, we analyze feelings, and also personality recognition. Let me explain this step by step. Regarding personalized spam, the goal was to develop personalized spam that was able to bypass and avoid or circumvent the current anti-spam mechanisms and prove that this is real, genuine spam. In the year 2009, there was this study that was conducted that saw that the massive compilation of data from Facebook, for example, is possible and easy. Some other researchers identified vulnerabilities that allowed to establish a link between a Facebook account and the email account with which that Facebook account was created. When seeing this, we understood, okay, if we start collecting email addresses on the net, for example, someone that in order to request assistance in a blog writes down his or her email address, well, that remains there forever, so to say. So first we try to collect or compile email addresses, then we collect as many email addresses as possible, and to this end we use a specific app that worked very, very well. We collected some thousands of email addresses, and we said, okay, let's go for another step. Let's maximize or make the most of this vulnerability offered by Facebook that to establish a link between personal Facebook accounts and email accounts. And this allows us to have the email account of a person and all the preferences or personal tastes. And those preferences are published publicly with no privacy setting whatsoever. Well, anybody virtually can access that information. So that's what we did. We accessed the information of the different parties. We collected the info they had available. We stored it in our databases in order to be able to create different profiles, different templates for emails. We created several. I'll show them to you later, but the goal of the project was to collect as much data as possible, to process data, and to create our own profiles. Once we have the profiles up and running, the idea is to carry out experiments, and through a website hosted in my university, we wanted to see how many people were arriving to the restaurant redirected from a link. And we always insisted on the fact that they had been part of an experiment conducted by the University of Mondragon. We shared the case with them, and they had the freedom to post comments, to unsubscribe from this experiment, etc. Here you can see the general process, or rather you've seen the general process, and now let me go into the details. Regarding the amount or number of email that we collected, almost 120,000 email addresses in just a matter of days. It was a very easy task because programs automatically collect the email addresses. As you know, out of the 120,000, we saw that more than 19% had an associated Facebook account, associated to the email account, that is. At the beginning, we were quite surprised. We didn't expect such a high percentage of accounts. So in the end, we had more than 22,000 accounts with an associated or linked email account. The next step was to download information, public information from the wall. And we were able to see back then in this graph the biggest or letters or words, which are the ones that appear more frequently in data. For example, musical taste. It was typical for people to make public the music they like. Also, gender. Gender by default, is made public. The study of, or rather the academic background, university or the secondary education center where the person has studied, and also the companies in which this person has worked. So, we saw that the info could be classified in different segments, and we created 3 types of templates. Number 1 would be a template that would be like the music template. Then we would have a template for the academic background of people, and the third template would be the template for the companies in which these people had worked. And with these 3 templates, what we did was, well, we had general, broader templates, and then we added more specific info in some cases. In some cases, we had all this information that you can see on slide, and others we didn't, and we left that in blank. But when we did have that info, we introduced it or entered it. So we begin by introducing the full name of the user, the name that appears on Facebook. However, if someone introduces let's say a fake name, well, it would be sent with a fake name and surname. But most people fill up this info with the real name and surname. Then we created a URL which allowed them to access our website. We introduced a token to be able to identify who had accessed us, and we considered some security issues. And the first thing we did was to select the language. If we saw that the public site of this person was in English, we would send emails in English. Well, actually, it was the other way around. We started with Basque, Euskera. There were very little people with Basque, and for those of them that understood Euskera, we would send them the email in Basque, otherwise in Spanish or in English. So, with the URL and the language selected, we got the template that we were looking for. And for example, in the case of the musical email, we added the city. If that person had the city saved in his or her profile. And in the case of the company, we included gender in over to address letters with a higher register, ladies, sir. We wanted to be more formal. That's why we collected this piece of information as well, gender. This is an example of a template in the case of the musical template. The users, Facebook users, were told by email that their favorite music bands, and we selected number 1 on the list, was going to go on tour. And we began with a hello, quoting his or her name, then asking this person whether they were ready to take part in the tour of his or her favorite group, and we tell him that this group or band is considering playing very near the city, and then we would tell them, if you wish more info, please visit this URL. In the case of university studies, we told them we're going to organize an event for former or for alumni from a higher education center or from high school. And we formally reported the company in which these people had worked. Those are the 3 templates, shortly put. And with it, what we did was basically 2 experiments. We sent typical traditional spam to the email addresses we had. This typical spam was based on what I saw in my spam mailbox, and we would send an email with something similar to what I had seen in my spam folder or spam tray. And on day 2, we sent to these people personalized messages. The goal was to compare results. Once the emails are sent and once we see the results, we saw that the difference between typical spam that we receive 0.41% response if compared with 7.762% for personalized spam. Well, as you can see, the gap is huge. The difference is significant or substantial. And this would be at a global level. If someone's interested, we did receive comments from people that told us that this wasn't well done, but these results were quite expected. And we realized that it was possible to create spam, to send spam, and it would perform better than traditional spam. Okay, we've done something malicious, now let's do good. And you need to consider the ethical considerations of this first project. When publishing on these experiments, when we submitted these paper in conferences, sometimes the paper was turned back because it was ethically controversial, but it's up to interpretation in any case. As we view it, we work towards enhancing online security. So we use user data to try to protect them in the future. That was our way of seeing things, and we only use public information. We don't crack passwords nor private user areas, just public info that they've had up on the internet. And last but not least, when we talk about trying to protect people from attacks that they will receive by attackers, I believe personally that we need to know how those attackers work, what's inside their mind. We need to know how they work in order to be able to create true, effective, and efficient protective systems. So we started to work on block 2, the detection block. And the first thing we did, based on what I said earlier regarding the positive tone that messages that are willing to sell something often say, we thought, okay, let's improve spam filtering data using feeling analysis techniques. This basically refers to the computational contracts for feelings expressed through the internet. We need to be able to identify whether texts are neutral, positive, or negative. With that information, what we did is as follows, and this is the proposal that we made, by the way. The first path that can be followed is the one in the upper part, second on the lower part. So our starting point is a data set, ensemble of data labeled as spam or ham, either legitimate message or spam. We applied different filtering algorithm, and what we did was to extract the same best classifiers among a number of classifiers that I'll refer to in some minutes, with different settings. And in total, we were talking about between 300 and 356 potential combinations, and then we extracted the 10 best. So that, and when taking path number 2, we would select the 10 best performers and try to improve the results of these 10 best performers, i.e. try to improve results with feeling analysis. And now I'll explain each with further detail. You need to understand that all experiments are done and tested by applying the 10-fold validation, and results are analyzed considering the accuracy of results and the number of fake positives, those emails, legitimate emails that end up in the spam folder or tray. In the first path, we need to apply different combinations to try to be able to identify the top 10, the 10 most significant results. Try to detect them and consider what the 10 best were. The classifiers that we used were the ones that you can see listed on this slide, and we combined them with 2 filters. Here, for example, the vector allows us to introduce many different settings. So we made the most of this in order to be able to obtain better results. Regarding path number 2, we said that we would apply feeling analyses, and to do this we need feeling classifiers. So we selected 2 paths. We created our own feeling analyzer, and second, we used a free public service textbook, an API that offers natural language processing services. And we sent the text directly to this API and received an answer regarding the polarity of these texts. As for in-house developments, we used our public dictionary, Senti-Warner. And I can't really remember, but basically we're talking about thousands of words, and each word has a score in terms of polarity. This varies depending on the type of word. For example, one same word can be a verb and a name at the same time. If it's a verb, it can be negative. If it's a word, it can be positive. So it depends on the nature of each word. So we applied or did different studies. We analyzed the text, and with the polarity of each word, we would then calculate the global polarity of the message. We did an average of everything we had collected. In this case, as we've seen, we've applied an existing API and we created our own classifiers. So what is this we had to do? Well, first identify the best classifiers. To identify the best classifiers, we got data sets that were already tagged and labeled as positive, negative, or neutral. We applied different classifiers to see which of them obtained the best results. And based on this selection, we then conduct our experiments. This would be the second path that I mentioned. In the data set that is labeled with spam and ham, we apply the best feelings classifiers. And in this case, we applied 3 feeling classifiers, and we created 3 new data sets with the info on the polarity of each text. And then we apply the 10 best classifiers to see the total results and to be able to compare results. When I say that we add polarity info, what were we doing? If the original data set had the text and then the tag or label is there where we added the polarity, and we would introduce algorithms and then the different settings in order to be able to obtain the results we were looking for. What data sets have been used? Well, 3 types of data sets. On the one hand, a data set made up of emails, and on the other hand, a data set made up of text messages, and last, a data set of social spam from social media.
And spam in social media. Here we use YouTube spam. We can highlight that in relation to email and SMS, we use 2 data sets, the first to experiment and the second to validate that we could keep the first improvement patterns. About email, here you have the comparison. The best one had an accuracy of 0.75%, and we could see that about spam in green, you see the percentage of positive messages, and about spam, positive messages were more than the ham one, and therefore spam is more positive than ham, HAM. So one of our hypotheses is being realized. Then we carry out the experiment, and we could see that in both data sets our estimate was improved. This is better shown in graphically shown in tables, but just as a summary, the best accuracy in both cases, this feelings analysis was positive. There was a reduction in false positives, and of the top 10, those are the results. It was improvement in 8 cases, 1 equaled it, and the last, the results were worse. And the same about SMS. We see that spam, there are more positive spam than ham messages. and the results, we reached the same conclusion, that results were improved compared to previous results. And lastly, in all messages present in the social media, the situation was different. There were more positive messages in ham than in spam. That was due to the fact that people, and we're speaking about YouTube comments, if we want to send spam, we will probably use the video of one of my YouTube competitors and write a negative comment. That's why the amount of positive and negative messages changes. And also here there was an improvement in accuracy in 10 of the most important ones, and the number of false positives was reduced. As a conclusion, we see that spam in emails and SMS is more positive than the legitimate, and in the social media the situation is the opposite. Feelings analysis can help to detect spam, and in 3 different scenarios results were positive. When we speak about 3 scenarios, we refer to social media, spam, SMS, and email. And although the difference seems to be small, if we take into account the real spam traffic, we see a significant improvement. Here we move to the area of personality recognition. We're going to do the same and following the same pathway with feelings analysis. We'll try to filter spam. What is personality recognition? Models to explain people's personalities with a few features that are stable and subject to measurement. As we see, the process is the same as when carrying out the feelings analysis, but when we apply those personality recognition techniques, we added more information. What is the model used? Myers-Briggs, that breaks down people's personalities in 4. We've used a web server, a public web server, and the web service gave back the value of all 4 dimensions. Extroversion, if it was an extroverted text, the peak of the text increased and the introverted didn't. There was a cut in half, upper part and lower part. Upper part extrovert, lower part introvert. Some people said that the text didn't have much personality, but of course texts do not have personality, but people. And you said you identify the authors of spam, you can identify their personality. We do the other way around. Texts do not have personalities, but a specific person influenced by her or his personality will write a certain text. As you see, the process is similar. We have an original data set. We apply personality recognition methods. We create new data set, and we apply the best 10 classifiers with by nation criteria. The text would be with the spam or harm label, and we will add the personality dimensions. In a descriptive analysis of this, we could see that between spam and ham there were differences, and spam is in green, and in gray we have the ham, and we can see differences when doing personality recognition. We carry out the experiments and we see the results in the emails. In both cases, taking into account that in the first data set, when we use the 4 dimensions of the model, there isn't any improvement. But when we use one, the sensing, the results show an improvement. About SMS, it's the same. There are differences between some messages and the others, and when carrying out the experiment, we could see an improvement. About spam in the media, there are also differences, and the result is that we improve. When we apply the 4 dimensions, there isn't any improvement, but if we apply the feelings one, there is an improvement. As conclusions, the majority of cases, results improve at the level of accuracy and false positives. That shows that personality recognition can be used to improve the spam classification. And lastly, once we see that both techniques are appropriate, we combine them to try to improve results obtained so far. That's why to this we added polarity and personality traits to each text, and we did all experiments plus the experiments with combined information of the data set. We made a comparative analysis, and we could see that about email spam, starting from the simple data set to the left. With feelings analysis, we see an improvement. Using personality recognition techniques, we improved even more, and with the combined one, we reached the top of our results. In email, in social media, we didn't see an improvement, but they did improve using a combined methodology. Conclusions are that the combination gives positive results. As the contributions, on one hand, we have evaluated the possibilities to create personalized spam that might reach higher click-through ratios. We have improved the criteria to sort spam using personality recognition techniques, and the combination of both techniques offer better result than just using them separately. And there are some lines for the future, but we see that at the end of the day, this is a PhD, the beginning of research, and it has given us possibilities to go on working in these lines, improving personalized spam, feelings analysis, and if you have any interest, I will be willing to give you my contact details. This is the list of publications in different journals and international or national conferences. And thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question or comment, I'll be delighted to answer you whether now or later.
A ver, espera, igual. Gracias a tu.
Thanks to your study or your research, you sell this into a marketing company and it will be very useful for them. Yes, this might be the case. So they have studied the text format, but if it goes personalized based on your email, that would be very useful. Yes, today we can see that Amazon do the same. They get our cookies from our browser, they get our information. We will do the same, but with personal information. And the results are better. Yes, they would be better. This is our idea. On one hand, to help marketing companies, but we try to protect more than sell. That's our idea.
Ya está. Algún... Pues nada, muchísimas
Thank you very much for your attention, and I see you.